What's up, everyone? We are back for another week of Roast Masters Fantasy Football here, providing you with some great content on free agency. We're back with Doug Glatke again and Garrett Harrison. What's up, guys?
So
And nothing much.
I'll tell you what, we're still looking pretty good for the coronavirus without having to shave up, get our hair cut. Pretty nice over there. So we got something going for us. Real quick before we start, what do you guys think of Gronk winning the 24/7 title at WrestleMania? I know Doug was talking about that.
I mean, obviously, I didn't watch WrestleMania, but I saw it in passing, and I saw all the people beating the crap out of Mojo Rawley,
Yeah.
and then I saw Gronk on top stanchion or stand or whatever, and I'm just like, oh my god, of course this is gonna happen, but I think he's gonna make the entertainment value of WWE go up because he has that crazy personality.
And we learned last night that he can win without Brady. So last time we kind of covered Tom Brady himself. We also dug a little bit into the Saints and Drew Brees and Emmanuel Sanders and stuff like that. We also talked about Teddy Bridgewater and the situation going on in Carolina. So we're all Steeler fans. We love the Steelers. So we're going to start this episode talking about our Steelers. I'll let everybody else go into detail, but the main signing was Eric Ebron, the tight end for the Colts, signed a 2-year, $12 million deal for the Steelers. Last year, 3 touchdowns, but the year prior, he led the league in touchdowns from tight ends, and that was only in 11 games last year, as well as 3 touchdowns. Last year, McDonald played 15 games for us and only had 3 touchdowns himself. Ebron with about 100 more yards. We also signed Derek Watt and some other signings. I'll let the guys talk about that and go into it, but Steelers have kind of struggled. We thought McDonald would be the answer at tight end. Not really. We thought Jesse James, he's gone. We haven't really had a great tight end since Heath Miller. So Ebron's definitely dominant. He's getting older, though. So what do you think Ebron brings to the table for us?
I think it's the perfect signing for the Steelers because he's not really going to replace Vance McDonald. He's just going to add to the tight end play. And you saw in Indianapolis, he always had a running mate with him with Jack Doyle.
Mm.
And we're going to get into a similar situation with him playing with Vance, where Ebron's going to get a lot more red zone looks, and he's going to have a really good quarterback thrown to him if Ben's able to come out of the gate and do what needs to be done.
What does this mean, Garrett, for fantasy? Having 2 of these guys, is it going to pull away from numbers from the wide receiver core, or what do you think Ebron adds to the table?
I don't know. I think as long as Ben starts and continues to start, doesn't get hurt, I think we'll be fine. I think anybody would be fine in fantasy to pick any wide receiver or tight end. My only concern is like you said, since Heath Miller, we haven't really had a solid, tight end, number one. I feel like it'll be a little bit different this year. I feel like Eric Ebron will be used more in the red zone, definitely. But it should be interesting. I ever since Heath, I haven't really had faith in most of our tight ends. It's been rough.
Yeah, ever since Jesse James dropped that ball, that was the end of it. We thought we had a tight end, and then obviously not his fault. So if we're talking fantasy, who do you think comes out as a better option, Ebron or McDonald?
I don't know. I feel like Ebron would be more of that red zone guy, but McDonald's going to be more of the guy you throw to moving the ball down the field. It's hard to say because you never know. But when you looked at the numbers when Ebron went off, he had more red zone touchdowns as a tight end than he did, just receiving down the field, moving the ball. So it'd be a toss up. I don't think he's a guy you take, until later in the draft if he's available. You just take a chance on either tight end because you never know with Ben. He spaces the ball out too much, and when he finds that one guy, that he keeps going to him. So it's hard. It's really hard to decide who you should go after.
Yeah. What do you think, Doug?
I think Garrett hit the nail on the head. It's going to be tough because Vance is going to probably get in the points as Ebron would in a given week just because of all the looks that he'll get in open field. But then Ebron's going to be getting the touchdowns. So it's kind of a double-edged sword because they're both not going to be a complete fantasy player per se. But I think it would be a good like last resort tight end option if you need it late in a draft.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I think McDonald is more if you have a PPR league. He's your guy to get the
Yes.
points off of. But if it's not a PPR league, then you go Ebron.
I could agree with that. So obviously, I mean, we talk pretty much who's fantasy value to us. Derek Watt's not going to be any fantasy value to any fantasy player out there. But interesting, we have two of the Watt brothers on the team. I so badly want the Watt trio on our team. That'd be awesome in
Yes.
Pittsburgh. But what do you think about we have Edmonds brothers in Pittsburgh. Now we got the Watt brothers in Pittsburgh. What do you think? We'll talk defense for a minute too with who we got because we had a couple other signings on the defensive end as well to help us out. So the Steelers defense is always a fantasy option though if you're looking at a team defense. Then they did well last year, improved it. Obviously, Derek's on the offensive end, but do you think the defensive signings that we did this year can push us to the top again?
I think it's going to help them a lot, especially when you combine in what they can potentially do during the draft. The real underrated acquisition out of all of this was getting Chris Wormley from the Ravens.
Yeah.
I feel like he's one of those guys that never really got a fair shake, but if you look at the tape, he looks really good and he could be an easy, cheap replacement for Javon Hargrave.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with Derek Watt, he's not completely remiss out of the defense/special teams value for the Steelers defense and special teams because he's a special teams wizard. He's really good on kickoffs. He's going to be similar to how Tyler Matakevich was, but better.
Okay. Interesting. So touch on that, Garrett. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'll agree with Doug. I think our defense is fine. I think even with losing Hargrave, I'm not really too concerned because we still had a great depth last year on the front line. In my personal opinion, I thought Alu, is that how you pronounce his name? I did really good coming in. I thought he did really solid coming in one of the games when he needed to be. My only concern is that, Hayward is getting up there. He's getting kind of old. So how many more solid years do we have? He's very injury prone and, sometimes in that middle of the season, which can hurt us. But I think overall we'll be fine on defense with signing Wormley. Our defensive backs, they looked better last year. I wouldn't say they looked great. They looked better from the past years. We have always been terrible in the past defense. But I think also with signing Derek Watt is going to really dwindle the play of Grimble. Is Grimble still with us?
I have no idea.
I think they let him go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if they did or if they did not, if he's still with us, then Grimble's really lost his position on the team. That's pretty much the only time we really used him is to bring in for a lead block, and now you have Derek Watt and you add him to special teams. I think overall it was a great signing, and I think we're moving in the right direction. We just need Ben to stay healthy. We need our wide receivers to come through. We just need everything to click right this year. We just can't rely on our defense like we did last year. And I understand because we had two young quarterbacks in there, but I think if we're going to have a time anytime soon, this year or the following year are going to be our only times that we're going to make a push to at least try to get a Super Bowl ring. I don't see anything after that unless we, trade to get a good quarterback, that's already in his prime. I don't believe in the way we draft quarterbacks. It's not very good.
No.
But
yeah, I agree with what Garrett says 100%. I think, this is the year or the year after with still having Ben that we need to do it. So we'll talk more about the Steelers come draft time, see how we do in the draft, which is going to be virtual, which will be really interesting to see how this works out. I'm excited to watch the draft coming up here at the end of April. Let's touch on another a team the team that Ebron came from, which was the Colts, signing Phillip Rivers to a 1-year, $25 million deal. Last year, fourth in the league in passing. He had 23 I believe 23 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. He was third worst in interceptions last year. He had it pretty rough. But still, the passing yards are there. He's got T.Y. Hilton still on the team, Paris Campbell, and Jack Doyle. What do you see out of this Colts team now? I mean, the last 2 years, they're like Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck just retires out of the blue. And now they get a guy like Phillip Rivers, who's a veteran. What do you think of this signing by the Colts?
I think it's a pretty decent signing. The only thing that's I'm kind of questioning is like what happens now with Jacoby Brissett,
Yeah.
and why would you? I thought that Brissett was decent last year, but at the same time, I understand the signing because Rivers is proven and he can make. I think he can make a lot happen with that Colts offense, even though there's really not a lot of weapons there. I'm interested to see how they do, but I think they'll be another semi above average team this season.
Yeah. I think a sleeper for me this year at wide receiver would be Paris Campbell. I think coming into his second year, with a guy like Phillip Rivers, if he gets to work with him a little bit, you still got T.Y. Hilton. So you always want to kind of look at who they else might throw to. I think Campbell could have a breakout year this year. We'll see. What do you think, Garrett?
I don't know. I mean, I agree with Doug. It's a decent signing, but at the same time, I feel like you're just giving up on Brissett. He looked really decent. I would say almost good. As his first full year starting, I didn't think he looked anything bad. He did everything he needed to do. What I really liked last year, who I might, if they're available in the draft, go after, is the Colts defense. I like the way they played. The defense wasn't bad. They weren't great, but they weren't bad, and they got turnovers and they got points. So if you're looking for a defense that doesn't that gets you at least a decent amount of points, Colts are always a good one because their defense last year, the middle linebackers were pretty solid. They had a couple nice sacks and they actually had a decent amount of turnovers too. But I think overall I think they're moving in the right direction. But I think just signing Phillip Rivers for 1 year, that's what's it going to do? It's not really going to. It's not going to change much.
No, and I mean he's got just as talented receivers this year, and they still got a good run game. Marlon Mack up there, Nyheim Hines played pretty well when Mack was injured. Because Mack at the beginning, he was having a fairly decent fantasy year last year. Marlon Mack was, and he was good to have in the lineup. So, and Rivers he's done well with the running backs. He's got Melvin Gordon. He had Austin Eckler. So I think this team's going to be pretty okay on offense. And like Garrett said, if their defense pulls through, this division is going to be really interesting, in my opinion, as it was last year. And I think it's going to be one of the most competitive divisions this year. Now that the Texans aren't there, I think they'll still be good, but I don't know if they'll be number one or not. But I think when we go into the divisions, I think this one we're going to look at is going to be really competitive. So we'll see what the Colts will do. Let's talk about somebody else new there in Chicago, the Bears. An interesting signing of Jimmy Graham going to the Bears. He is a 2-year, $16 million deal. Last year, 3 touchdowns, 447 yards. He was the worst use of tight end in the league. They did not use him at all in Chicago. Trey Burton's also on that team, only 84 yards, 14 catches. They also trade for Nick Foles. Nick Foles is coming from the Jaguars, and he was injured pretty much all of last year, and then Minshew got the start. So kind of 2 things to talk about. We got Jimmy Graham on the team going from going from a team that he wasn't really used on now to a team that was the worst in all of NFL last year in throwing to their tight end. And then add Nick Foles. What does this change that offense, Doug, or what is this signing of Foles and Graham do to this Bears offense?
I don't really know how much it's going to change it. I mean, Jimmy Graham's going to provide good value for the Bears, but I don't really see him as a legitimate fantasy option anymore, especially with the potential of him being in a timeshare with Trey Burton.
Hmm.
And with the Foles thing, I think they're just trying to find a way to you know, put pressure on Mitch Trubisky to try and be better. I mean, obviously, that defense is so good that even if um, Trubisky just plays average, and that defense would be able to get him into the playoffs. So like they need to try and get him from playing really bad to being just kind of okay, and they'll be all right. But I feel bad for Bears fans, man. Imagine taking Trubisky with that pick in hindsight, knowing what Patrick Mahomes has done. Like, oh my goodness, that would be giving me nightmares.
Yeah. What do you think, Garrett? I mean, Trubisky's obviously starting, but is Foles going to fight for that starting job, or what are we going to see in Chicago this year?
Yeah, I think it'll be I think he's a failsafe. Like me and Doug said before, I think he's a failsafe. I think Trubisky starts to crap the bed. It's time to put Foles in there. I I don't know how I feel about Jimmy Graham because ever since he left Seattle, dude, he has not been good. You had one of the best. You had a really good quarterback, actually one of the best quarterbacks in the league with Aaron Rodgers, and the dude should have blown up. He didn't really put up the numbers I thought he would with Aaron Rodgers.
No.
And that's where it scares me. Now you're going to the Bears. you don't even have a quarterback there. Come on, man.
And
Oh.
like I said, the Bears were the worst team to utilize their tight end last year. And Graham, and you would think with Aaron Rodgers would do a little bit better, but that's not the case. So I don't know. It's just crazy. I don't think I agree with Doug. I don't think he's going to be a viable fantasy option again this year. I in my auction draft league, I picked Trey Burton real late. I was like, Burton's a talented tight end, but are they going to use him? Obviously, they didn't use him. He had like one big game that got me points, but that was about it. So I just don't know what's going to be happening in Chicago up there, if this is going to help or not. But I think Trubisky's on a tight leash up there. I think a few bad games to start the year and Foles is in. I think they got a short leash.
Oh yeah, and I agree with Doug. That defense is good enough to win a championship. You just have to have a quarterback in there that can at least move the ball, get down there, score some points. Trubisky is going to have – I don't think Trubisky is going to be anything fantastic, but he's going to have to play like Tyrod Taylor did whenever the Buffalo Bills made the playoffs. That's exactly how they're going to have to play because that Buffalo Bill defense was good. Tyrod Taylor wasn't anything amazing, but he was decent. He moved the ball down the field. You know, you have a decent run game with Montgomery. You just got to have all the pieces and play to what what game style you need to play. You have to learn that to adapt. And I think the Bears are trying too much with trying to get Trubisky to get rid of the ball, and it's just not working. It's just not working.
Yeah. Let's stick with the Bills now that you're talking about them. They got Stephon Diggs, a big sign for the Bills. Last year, over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. It adds to the core of John Brown and Cole Beasley in Buffalo. Obviously, you got Devin Singletary coming back second year. This team's going to be interesting on offense. You know, they have a pretty good defense, but what do you think this offense is going to produce this year? I think this team's going to be pretty well, but it's kind of like a wild card for me with this offense and Josh Allen, of course, did pretty well last year. He was average. Now he has Stephon Diggs. So do you think Diggs is going to blow up here in Buffalo, or what's going to happen with this offense?
I think this offense with Buffalo, it reminds me a lot of the Colts whenever Andrew Luck was healthy. They're always going to be in the hunt or in the conversation for a playoff spot. But if the defense doesn't step up at the right time, they'll always end up missing the playoffs. Obviously, their defense is really good. They have some really good pieces. Tremaine Edwards is fantastic. But I think that until Josh Allen becomes a more complete quarterback, they're still going to be a bubble team.
All right. What do you think?
Ooh, that's hard, man. I feel like Josh Allen really improved last year. I think he did. I think he did pretty well. He was probably one of the quarterbacks I thought improved, out of his draft class with Trubisky and stuff. Honestly, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be good. I do agree with Doug that they're kind of like Andrew Luck when he was healthy, didn't have many weapons, but now they added Stephon Diggs. I think they'll be fine, and that defense is good. If they mark my words, Buffalo Bills are winning that division. They're winning the division.
I agree. They did a thing on Fox Sports Bet on Twitter. It said kind of like what do you call that? Like they gave 3 bets and they said which one would you play, like which one would you call or which one would you fold, and it was like it gave numbers. I think it said over 9 wins for the Bills. I think it said over 10 wins for the Patriots and then over 6 wins for the Jets. And pretty much everybody said the Bills more than the Patriots at, their perspective win in the win column. People would say that the Bills would almost win that division. So I think this is the year for that. We talked last week about the Patriots, what we thought about them, but I think, Diggs is another weapon. I just hope that he's used just as well as he was in Minnesota. So we'll see. Before we end, we'll talk about, let's see here. Let's go with just a couple of them. I'll just rattle off. You can talk about them. It's not really any huge signings, not much to talk about, but I'll have you guys just break it down. Dolphins added Jordan Howard to a 2-year, $10 million deal, which was kind of quiet. Nobody really heard about that. I haven't heard it on social media. He's going to take over for Balaj, who kind of struggled last year. And the Giants signed Dion Lewis, which is an interesting signing, to go behind Saquon Barkley. And they're also keeping Corey Coleman. So what do you think out of those? I mean, just break it down. It's not much big to talk about, but just break down both of them.
I really like the Dion Lewis signing for the Giants because it gives Daniel Jones a bit of a receiving back, kind of a dual threat kind of back to go with Saquon. And I think that team's going to be a very underrated team next season, the Giants are. And then with the Dolphins, Jordan Howard's always been a decent running back. And I think that's a very solid location for him because it's going to be a low pressure situation. There's really going to be nobody paying attention to him. So he can just go in there, go to work and do his thing. I think that he could be a very solid bench option for a fantasy owner late in the draft.
I could see that at the flex. How about you, Gary?
Yeah, I like them both. I like the Jordan Howard one a little better. I feel like he's going to get more looks down there than Dion Lewis up with Saquon. But honestly, I think Jordan Howard's near the end of his career, and I think that's where he's going to end his career in Miami. And unless he blows up, but I think that's where he's going to end his career and maybe sign back with the Chicago Bears and retire as a Bear. My only concern with the Giants is y'all got to start signing some offensive linemen. Saquon looked terrible last year, didn't get much. Couldn't get the ball past the line of scrimmage sometimes because you got like 2 dudes coming across the line. Like, can you guys not block? Are you blind? Like, what's going on here? I think if they can figure out that offensive line, they would be fine. They could be a 500 team, on the bubble wild card seed. But until they can figure out what to do, it's pretty rough up there right now.
I was so blessed to have had the second pick in last year's draft of ours because it forced me to take a guy named Christian McCaffrey, even though I wanted a guy named Saquon Barkley so bad. And thank God that happened because McCaffrey balled out and Saquon, everybody thought was going to have one of the best years after coming off a great year in his rookie year and just not that great. So if Matt is watching, thank you for taking Saquon. Christian McCaffrey. I do. I'm pleased. Thank you, Matt. He's staying in our league this year just for that reason. But anyways, just an interesting stat I found on ESPN about quarterbacks drafted in the top 5 since 1999. Half of them have a losing record. 4 have at least 600 plus winning percentage. 2 MVP winners, and Matt Ryan, Cam Newton. 1 Super Bowl champion out of them, which was Eli Manning. And 2 have 5 plus Pro Bowl selections. That's Phillip Rivers and Donovan McNabb. So kind of looking at these stats in the last 21 years, only produced 1 Super Bowl winner. I mean, it's crazy really to think that. Now, that's drafted in the top 5. So we talked a little bit about Joe Burrow, and there's some quarterbacks. Tua could go in the top 5. But just looking into that, what do you think about those statistics? And do you think that some of these guys this year, if going in the top 5, could break that?
I think you got to think of it this way, with those stats not being where they should be. For as many of like top 5 quarterbacks that have been good, there's been just as many people that are like Tim Couch, complete draft bust, amounts to really nothing at the NFL level. Ryan Leaf comes to mind, Jameis and Marcus Mariota both underachieved. So like, I don't know, but I think I'm big on the Joe Burrow train, man. I think he can be fantastic for the Bengals if they are who drafts him. I think that they are gonna be who ends up drafting him. And then with Tua, I don't know. With Tua, I'm in a wait and see type of phase with him. I want to just see how he does wherever he goes.
Yeah.
And I think another underrated guy that might go in the top 5, but definitely top 10 would be Justin Herbert from Oregon.
Yeah.
I really like him. I think that he has an NFL type build. Looks like a pocket passer, and I think he could fit really well into a lot of the systems.
Yeah. What do you think, Garrett?
I don't know. I think the problem with drafting quarterbacks so early, you want to get a quarterback. You want to test them out. But a lot of these first 5 picks are wasted because these quarterbacks can't transition into the NFL. It's a whole different style of play. And that's where sometimes these quarterbacks are, they get destroyed their first season. You don't have many quarterbacks who go out there and just, straight up just dominate. I think Burrows will be fine. But these teams, like Cincinnati, has to realize that this year, if they draft Burrows, it is going to be terrible. You're going to play against the Ravens twice, and you're going to play against the Steelers twice. Burrows is going to get murdered by both of those defenses. All right. Overall, I'd like to see Herbert drafted high. Who's the quarterback for Oklahoma? I can't think of his name. Why can't I think of his name?
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think he might be a good Russell Wilson. Yeah,
Yes.
I think he's going to be pretty solid. You got to be patient on him. I think he'll be fine. He kind of reminds me of like Murray. I think those style of quarterbacks are transitioning into the NFL right now, and I think Hurts is my favorite out of those ones because I think he'll go to at least a decent team right away. But Burrows can definitely prove himself if he can get the team built around him that needs to be.
Yeah, and take a look at the 2018 draft class. I mean, you had a couple quarterbacks go in the first round. You had Baker Mayfield overall. He hasn't done anything yet. You had at the 3rd spot Sam Darnold. He hasn't proven to be anything. You have Josh Allen and Buffalo at 7, which he's just been average. And Josh Rosen, who's terrible, is at 10. So you're finding a lot of value later. And so when I saw that stat, I was like, that's pretty interesting to look at it, and it makes you think, are teams more likely to jump on a top defensive player and wait for a quarterback if they need one, compared to looking at those stats? A team might be like, let's wait and get a quarterback, see who's there later on, and let's stack up on these defensive players or linemen instead of jumping on the top guy that's available at quarterback.
I think one of the quarterbacks that scares me in this draft is Tua. I don't know how well he's going to do in the NFL, man. A lot of quarterbacks that come out of Alabama, in my personal opinion, I don't think they do good in the NFL. I think they ride that defense. They ride how many good offensive weapons it can get. And whenever you get in the NFL, you're going to get drafted to a crappy team, and then you get stuck with someone you didn't have and like your solid lineup. The competition is so much harder in the NFL that whenever you transfer from being number one ranked all the time to come in, you just get clapped. And I think Tua, it would be a terrible choice for any team to take in the top 10. I think he's a second rounder. I think you need to get past him and figure out and then just draft him to a team that already has a quarterback, sit him behind that quarterback for like 2 years, groom him, and then you start him. I don't think he's a quarterback you bring right in the league and start instantly, because I think that injury really did him in. And how many more hits can the dude take like that? Because they said that injury was close to what Theismann or whatever his name was, Joe Theismann. They said that injury was very similar to that, which ended his career. So dude's gonna have to change his game up a lot. So we'll see.
I agree with Garrett. How about you, Doug?
I was going to say something about it earlier. I think that out of all of the quarterbacks in this draft class, he might be the one that's most likely to bust.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's had everything around him for so long, and there's been a lot of talk that Miami is going to be the team that drafts him, and I think that would be the worst possible scenario for him, because he's going to go to a team that has nothing.
Yeah, if you take away from Garrett's point, though, I mean, if you take away from Garrett's point, though, I mean, he'd be behind, Fitzpatrick, though. He wouldn't. Right. Maybe he wouldn't start. So maybe for Miami's sake, it wouldn't be a bad pick, because they're not going to have him lead the team this year. But I mean, on Tua's level, though, he won't be happy with it.
Yeah, I think an interesting location for him would be the Chargers, because he'd be behind Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
And that's the other team that I've been saying with Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Is he'd be behind Tyrod Taylor, and he would just be learning from Tyrod until he's ready to take over, whether it be in the middle of the year or the next season. And I think that would be a good situation for any of those younger quarterbacks that are coming out of the draft to come into.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, do you think Bill Belichick and that organization could draft Tua and, either just ride him for a year and see what he can do, or put him behind that quarterback up there? Or do you think Herbert could go to the Patriots? Patriots are in a hurry for quarterback. So
Herbert would be the only one I'd see that could work out with the system up there out of all of them.
I think both of them, both Tua and Herbert, don't make it past 7th or 8th overall in the draft, just because of teams being hungry for quarterbacks. If we're talking a Patriots type of option, Jake Fromm or Jordan Love are both options that could go to New England. But I think that Bill has his mind set on playing Jarrett Stidham. Yeah. So we're gonna see what Jarrett Stidham can do.
Do you think Jake Fromm will make it that far in the draft, though?
I think Jake Fromm is going to be a 2nd-round pick. The one guy that I think could sneak into like the top 15, top 20 would be Jordan Love. But I think Jake Fromm is a lock to go in the 2nd round.
Interesting stuff, guys.
Yeah. I before you end, Ben.
Yeah.
I think Jake Fromm is probably the most NFL-style quarterback in this draft that we're going to have. He's a pocket passer, not going to run with his legs. He's going to get rid of the ball when he needs to. I think he is overall going to be probably the best, in my opinion, watching him play, NFL-style quarterback. Though the NFL quarterbacks are changing, they scramble with their legs more, I think. But if a pocket passer, Jake Fromm is definitely the guy you want to go with.
I agree.
Yeah, I
agree.
I think value later on in the draft, I think he's going to be a good value pick for any team that drafts him. But good talking with you guys this week. When we come back next time, we will be discussing the Cowboys and their re-signing of Amari Cooper, as well as the situation going on there with Dak. We'll also talk about the Denver Broncos and their signing of Melvin Gordon and also waiving Joe Flacco. And we'll get into a little bit of the Redskins situation with trading for Kyle Allen and finish up some loose ends. And if anything else big comes out, we'll discuss it. Other than that, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel and follow us on our social media, which is tagged to our YouTube page. You can go on there, follow us. It means a lot. We're also on SoundCloud, RM Fantasy Football. If you'd prefer to listen just to the audio, if you're driving or don't want to look at our faces, you can go on there and just listen to the audio. But who wouldn't want to look at Garrett and Doug's face? I mean, come on, we make the show. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching and have a good one.